Hi there, this is Holly Van Hart. Welcome to my You Are My Heroine Facebook Live interview show. If you don't already know me, I am a visual artist, and my paintings are inspired by the natural world around us, as well as all the possibilities and opportunities we have in our lives. So given that, I couldn't think of a better person to have on this show today than Dr. Leslie Field. So Leslie is a good friend of mine. She is the founder of an organization called ICE 911 that we're going to hear about today. ICE 911 is a boots on the ground solution to reduce global warming. Leslie is also the founder of a tech company called SmallTech Consulting and a consulting professor at Stanford University, a mother of two, and so much more. So Leslie, you are one of my heroines. And I'm really happy to have you here today. And by the end of this interview, hopefully you, as a listener, you'll know why Leslie is one of my heroines. So welcome, Leslie.
Well, thank you so much, Holly. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just great. Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, Leslie. So please take a minute and fill in some gaps from my intro and give us a little glimpse into your personal life.
Well, as Holly said, I am a mother of two. I am fairly obsessed with climate change these days, as you will hear. It seems to be the great problem of the age and of my kids' generation. Let's see. I have lots of hobbies. I love to paint, but I haven't gotten a chance for a long time. I love to sing, and I've rejoined a choir. Yay. And our youngest is about to go off to college. So he'll go off in the fall, and our oldest is about to graduate from college. So we've got a time of big transitions, and that's why I rejoined a choir. I have to reboot a hobby or two to fill in the gap. I have really enjoyed being a parent all these years, and my understanding is it doesn't stop even when they go off to college.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. So Leslie, you are the founder of ICE 911. So tell us about the organization and why you founded it.
All right. So I saw Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth movie all those years ago, about 11 years ago now. And when I saw it, again, it was my kids who popped to mind. They were 6 and 10 years old at the time. And the thing that I realized was that climate experts were not at all confused about whether climate change was happening. The argument was, how bad is it? How fast is it coming? And I thought, wow, I think maybe I got to put this on my to-do list. As a mom, it seemed like something I needed to do. And what I didn't tell you about my background, I guess, is I'm an inventor and an engineer, and I've got, the luxury of having had a wonderful education. And so I started really brainstorming, well, that ice albedo feedback effect was really important in the movie. And given that, is there anything I could do? And I thought, those famous words, if not me, who, if not now, when, gee, I'm one of, several billion people, why me? And it's like, well, why not me? And so I started thinking about, from my background, well, is there something that I could do? And I have a minor in material science, and I started thinking, what if the disappearance of the reflectivity in the Arctic, of the reflective multi-year ice, what if I look at that as a materials problem? And that's where it all began. It was, what safe material could you use to replace that lost reflectivity and maybe be a backup plan in case we needed it someday? Looks like we need it.
Wow. So that was in your spare time, in addition to working a full-time job and raising 2 children.
And a lot of energy. So
Leslie was being very modest when she said she's an innovator, and Leslie, I think Leslie is the holder of many, many patents. I think your count is 50 or more at this point. Is that right, Leslie?
53.
Yeah. 53. Amazing. Totally amazing. Okay. So I think most of us listening will know that the effects of global warming are bad, but I'm just going to ask you to revisit that and just tell us, why is this such a big problem right now? Is it really as bad as we hear about?
It may be worse than you hear about, depending how hard you're listening. The funny thing about this work is it's gone from being a decade too soon, which is really how it felt way back when I got this started, to being just in time or maybe too late, right? But I prefer to think just in time, and there's cause to believe that. But suddenly people are really getting it. And the problems are different. There's some people I'm now beginning to work with in different alliances, the Healthy Climate Alliance, 300 by 2050, thinking about 300 ppm CO2 by 2050. And one of the folks I've been speaking to the most in those groups, Peter Fiatkowski, is beginning to parse this out as there's separate problems. We need to get the CO2 down and really look at climate restoration. And at the same time, we need to restore the Arctic. And if you don't do either one of those, you've got some real problems. And so there's a beautiful link that I guess we could post later probably to a short piece in Yale Environment by Peter Wadhams, one of the great ice experts of the world, articulating how bad it is if the Arctic goes. And I'm reading his longer book right now, A Farewell to Ice. But some of the problems, if the Arctic in particular goes, involve, you could have, if all the ice goes, you can have a very rapid warming of the Arctic, of the ocean, unimaginably quickly if all the ice disappears. The ice is an amazing stabilizing influence right now. You can release vast amounts of methane plumes from things that are currently frozen under the Arctic Ocean. That could be released rather rapidly. And so there's a host of things that would drive the temperatures up much, much higher if we don't save the Arctic. So it's its own separate and extremely important problem. What's been motivating me for a long time was the thought that as Arctic ice disappears, you take on more sunlight, more solar energy in the summer without being able to reflect it. And that drives temperatures up, numbers from 20% to a third of all global temperature rise being from this one effect of taking on instead of reflecting more summer sunlight. It's a big deal. So
wow,
yeah,
that is a big deal.
Yeah, it could be far worse than you're hearing, depending what it is you read.
Oh boy.
But is it hopeless? No. I mean, the great news is humanity loves a cliffhanger, I think. And now that it is so bad, people are getting really alarmed about it. Whether or not we think governments will take action in time, and things like the Paris Accords were really, really important. But the experts are saying that that's probably not aggressive enough, and having things actually hold to that is really difficult. But when you get enough people, ordinary people like us, saying we got to do something. There are billions of us, and together we're powerful force, and that's what I'm seeing that gives me great, great hope. The students in my Stanford class, I teach every fall a class on engineering, entrepreneurship, and climate change. My students are so revved up. I have at least as many auditors as students. They're so revved up. So the power of people knowing we've got to do something and we can't wait for someone else. We've got to figure out the smartest things to do, how to band together and do something.
That's what I really admire about you and this effort here, Leslie. Awesome.
Thank you.
I want to say to anybody out there in Facebook land, I have a set of questions for Leslie, but this is meant to be interactive. So if you have any questions, please type them in the comments below, and I'll be able to read them and ask Leslie as we go along here. So please participate with us. Okay. Leslie, one thing I love about your solution is that, that you have a solution and you've tested it and it is having an impact in your tests, and it sounds like you're ready to deploy. So help educate us more about what the solution is and your testing and deployment timeframe.
Okay. And I'm realizing I give long answers. I bet you would hope I give shorter ones. So I'll try that. In short, going through a whole list of things that could reflect sunlight while adhering to certain basic principles. I've gone through things from daisies to hay to hollow glass and everything in between. And the thinking is you want something that's safe, reversible, removable, wettable, and big enough not to be breathed in. And what we've come to are things like hollow glass spheres, something wettable and bright at any rate. What I like about that family of things, if you involve things that include glass, don't have to be hollow glass spheres, but something that includes that kind of characteristic, you're fundamentally talking about sand. And you're fundamentally talking about floating materials. And that's very handy in freeze-thaw cycles. Wettable is good because you're not going to pick up oil-based pollutants. Something not involving food for critters, all the marine life is important. That's the backpacker's ethos, really, of, don't seed extra food in there. Who knows how you're going to change the environment. And right. So this is one of the most environmentally benign families of solutions we can think of, but and we've tested those a lot, things akin to them as well. Without getting married to any one particular material, but the class of materials we use is fundamentally that. Things that are wettable and inexpensive enough and commercially available and, easy to deploy, that sort of thing, not needing much material. And we have been field testing, you're right. I mean, you can theorize about a lot of this, but until you start developing the methods to measure it and deploy it and see it work, your learning curve isn't complete. And there's so much that we've learned over time about what's hard, what's easy, what works well, how to get those instruments to hold up in the Arctic, how to get the permits, things like that. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge, and it's worth developing it. The whole point was to develop something that could be ready, could be incrementally applied, could be unapplied if we needed to, before our backs are to the wall, climate-wide. Have it ready. So.
And Leslie, you've been testing it here in the lower 48 and also in Alaska. Is that right?
That's right. We've been testing. We started out on my deck, in warm sunlight in little tanks. We moved into the Sierra Nevadas pond that I had permission in, actually a flowing meadow before that. Canada one season to learn from a really terrific ice researcher, Christian Haas, who was teaching up there, and then Barrow, Alaska, and Minnesota. Good grief, I can't forget Minnesota. We've been in a wonderful retired PhD chemist's backyard for years at the had dug, and that's been a really nice way to get cold testing as well as, a rather friendly environment where you could warm up, in between what you're doing there and his garage and his house. Very courteous. And then we've been working in Barrow, Alaska for a couple seasons, which is as far north in the U.S. as you can go, aided by the local science outfitters up there, UIC Science. And really working with the native Inupiat people for whom the ice is really, really important for their livelihood, as well as they know how to keep us poor old Californians alive up there. It's been interesting.
How can you tell in your tests that you're successful? So I assume you're measuring temperatures and they're going in the right direction.
Right. We measure some of our most important information is photographic, which is funny. If you ever watch the Chasing Ice movie, you can see how challenging it is just to keep cameras going up in cold weather. And we have challenges with with cameras, with temperature measurements, with looking at how long have we delayed the ice melt. And that's how we look at it. And yeah, we always see a delay. We're eager to move on to sea ice. And getting the permits for that is a whole next step. We'll be starting with deploying a buoy, an instrumentation buoy, up in Barrow offshore, working on the permitting to do that. Our target date for that is March 2018.
Wow, March 2018. And so this means you're moving out of this testing phase into deployment?
Well, it will continue with testing. We go step by step. This last year, we made the biggest deployment area we've ever made. We finally used some automated machinery, custom built for us by an outfit in Minnesota that our Minnesota hosts had connected with. And they, the generous gifts people give you of time and equipment and care. You know, we had a seed spreader customized to spread our materials, and it ran along behind a snowmobile. That won't work on sea ice, but it was wonderful for getting a big area out on this slightly inland pond that we had permits to work on. Yeah, it's this is another one of those things that give me hope, right? That the people who collaborate with you, it's amazing.
Sure. You know, I've seen some of the photos from your work in Alaska, and I just hope you keep taking more photos and videos, because this is just going to be fascinating to watch it unfold. So tell us about your first trip to the Arctic, and you know, what was the experience like?
Oh, well, the first trip, I've been lucky enough to collaborate with this wonderful instrumentation expert from about a year into the project. We had heard about each other through our various incessant networking, I guess. And Satish Chetty joined then just after about a year of this, and he had instrumentation knowledge and connections up in Barrow. And he had said it would make sense for us to work in Barrow. And a few years ago, we had a very generous donor actually who said, if I give you $10,000, will you get to Barrow and do some work? Well, get to Alaska and do some work there. I thought, absolutely, let's check it out. And getting Satish's time at that point to be able to go with me, he has a full-time job too. And so he's been a volunteer. And so I had to go without him for what worked for my schedule. So I'm going up there all alone and getting onto smaller and smaller planes. You know, you change planes several times by the time you get to Barrow, including the last leg of it. You drop off a lot of oil workers and then pick up new ones at Prudhoe Bay, Dead Horse. And I've got this guy next to me who's a contractor up there in Barrow, who's delighting and trying to terrify me about, what are you, a woman, going up there alone for? I forgot to worry about
him, Leslie.
You know, I forgot to worry about that.
That's great. That's a classic.
And I got out of the plane, and you know, it's pretty barren up there. I realized later part of what was bothering me about what's different here is there are no trees. And I asked later about that. They just, from an expert at University of Alaska at Anchorage, and he said, well, trees just haven't happened to get north of the Brooks Range. There's no reason they shouldn't be there. They just haven't gotten that far north. Interesting. But, you know, you're there in this area that looked pretty desolate to me with no trees and the sleet blowing in my face, and it's only September. And I've got one person I've made a connection with up there. I just couldn't find out much from a distance. So a NOAA guy who worked on atmospheric sampling, who said, sure, I'll show you around my lab and go from there. And, you know, here's where you should make a reservation to stay. And I'm just, the sleet's blowing in my face. I'm just realizing what a tenuous hold I have on this absolutely out on the frontier place. Going to be an interesting few days. And it really was, you know, network by network piece. You start building out, oh, the people you should connect with are UIC Science. Oh, the weather expert out by the airport, the National Weather Service guy probably has records of ice, you know, from way back. And he turned out to be a wonderful person who gave me the chance to tour his weather balloon all over the world. Here's a fun fact for you. In these remote areas, twice a day, same time, synchronized within an hour, there are weather balloons released all over the world, all at once, to give us our world's weather. And he had me his weather balloon. So it just small things like that of, you are not lonely in a place like Barrow if you're scientifically minded, because there's a lot of people up there who care about that. And we got connected to the right people for the permitting. So Satish was able to go a few weeks later and then work the rest of that out. And then we got to go together and get things deployed. So it's
awesome.
Of materials. Yeah, it's a wonderful feeling we get now. Now, whenever I go, I'm with a team and I know people there, and it's certainly not lonely. But that first, that was interesting.
And Joanne, thank you very much for your question here. So Leslie, we got a question from Joanne Teasdale. She says, brilliant and clean idea. And what is the process of spreading the micron-sized hollow glass beads?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Joanne. And Joanne, actually, I met up in Barrow one of the times we were there.
Wow.
Yeah, awesome. It was awesome. And we've gotten to know each other since. She does wonderful photos, works on a project called Women in Water. And thanks, Joanne. So these hollow glass spheres, these micron-sized ones are, or several tens of micron-sized, are one of the materials that we look at. And that was through that automated spreader that I described a bit ago. So it's like planting seeds, only you're trying to put them on the surface of the material, dragged around behind a snowmobile. There's so many details about getting something to work there. Even though it was a Minnesota manufacturer who had adapted one of their seed spreaders, they had forgotten about having the oil just good enough for as cold as it got up in the Arctic for us. And so you think Minnesota, they know all about cold weather, but they had forgotten that one detail. And so our INUPIAT coworkers up there through UIC Science were pointing out, what kind of grease, what kind of oil do you have in there? And that solved it. So it's step by step. On sea ice, it will have to be different. And our colleagues have come up with some interesting ideas there of how to spread the materials from ship base and blowers. And that seems really pretty clean for that particular kind of material. And I should note that one of the most exciting things for us lately is not just working out the deployment methods and instrumentation, which has been really important, but we've been lately working with climate modelers, expert climate modelers at Climaformatics, who have been getting to model for us without us having to make deployments in every bit of the Arctic to see how that works, which would obviously be prohibitive, to see where are the areas of biggest impact. Very important point is we're not trying to carpet the whole Arctic. We're trying to see, are there specific areas where that would be especially important? And the climate modelers are pointing us towards that. And that is really exciting times for us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Leslie, you are running a high-tech company at the same time as running this nonprofit and hands-on research. Tell us about the nonprofit side. So you've got the research, but you're also the leader of the nonprofit. So tell us all about that and what's involved with that.
Yeah, I used to give talks. I haven't been asked again. I have to get back to this. Guilty conscience. To groups of graduate women at Berkeley and at Stanford, where I teach. And, I found myself a few years ago saying, you can have it all except sleep. But at this point, I'm trying to do a lot better on the sleep. And I will say that running the nonprofit has become more and more of a management job. When I was doing this alone, the benefit to that was it was simpler. I mean, it was me and sometimes Satish if I could grab his time. So very simple in its way, grueling but peaceful. You're out there on a pond spreading stuff around. Okay, it's just you. And now I have a large team to coordinate. But the benefit of that is just immense because it is not lonely. So that part is wonderful. You've got more minds looking at anything that you're thinking. And that's fantastic. And you get to go so much faster, so much better than when you're all by yourself. But depending how you count it, between our couple of employees, our contractors, and our volunteers, it's a team. And our board, our governing board, and our fundraising advisory board now, we've easily got at least 20 folks that we're interfacing with. And you know, I mean, as I say, that's wonderful, but it does have its own administrative load. And one of the things, that high-tech company you're talking about, my engineering consulting firm, I am handing more and more of the work of managing, of getting back to people, off to my team members there. So I'm still in charge, but I am delegating as much as I possibly can, because I'm finite.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
I have to mention that in my screen, your face is blocked by Joanne's question.
Yes. Oh, let me take that off now. I meant to do that.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. And if anyone else has a question, please put it in the comments below. I have just a few more questions for Leslie, so if you have one, we're happy to throw that at Leslie as well. All right. So, Leslie, okay. Okay, I have a few questions to wind up here, and then I'm going to ask you to tell us about where we can learn more about ICE 911 and how we can help. So before that, I have two questions that relate to my theme of heroine. So tell us about one of your heroines and why you admire her.
I was thinking about this, and I have so many categories of heroines, and you probably won't let me go on that long about it.
No.
That's too bad, because there are many. There are relatives, there are artists, there are writers, you, Joanne included. There are my coworkers. I mean, there's so many people to admire. This will seem obscure, but my favorite authors, I guess, are ones that I could talk about. But you probably want environmental. Let's go with
anybody.
Well, you know, Louise Penny, people who write books that fill me with hope. Basically, anybody who goes this path of understanding the dark side of things, because, I mean, our project is provoked by the dark potentials if we don't do something about it. Somebody who understands the dark side but chooses the light and goes for the most positive and warm way to fight the dark is my hero. And so, you know, Louise Penny's novels are like that. Longer ago, Elizabeth Peters, Dorothy Gilman Butters just wrote series that just, they ground you. After a really dark day, you just, even if you're rereading it for the nth time, to go back into those and see how their heroines in their books just dealt with tough situations and came through shining. It's wonderful.
You know, I'm a big reader, but I don't think I've read books by either of those authors. So thank you.
Well, I recommend. Yeah, Louise Penny writes now, and I'm on pre-order for her latest book. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, one of my favorite authors, Nora Ephron, she said, "Above all, be the heroine of your life." And I really love that quote. So what piece of guidance might you have for the rest of us about being our own heroine?
So I would start with those things that I quoted as motivating for me earlier, the if not me, who, if not now, when. But I also like this change up of I think it's the Desiderata poem of saying, give me the wisdom, right? That poem goes, give me the wisdom to accept what I cannot change. But I really like the change on that I've seen lately, which is give me the wisdom or the strength to change what I cannot accept. So instead of accepting what you can't change, change what you can't accept.
I love that.
Yeah, it's powerful. And
That's very powerful.
Yeah, it so speaks to climate situation and so many other situations.
Yeah. Awesome. Change what I cannot accept.
Yep.
Love it. Love it. All right. Leslie, so where can we go to learn more about ICE 911 and how can we help?
Well, there's all kinds of ways you can help. We do run to an amazing extent from help from volunteers. And that's worth writing to us. info@ice911.org would do that. We also are in the middle of a fundraising campaign. So we need money to do what we're doing. Our attempt right now, our goal is to get to making a sizable deployment enough to actually make a difference by 2020. And that's going to take a lot of funding. And so we've got a Giving Tuesday campaign that's active, that's going tomorrow. And we need more people and more ability to offer people stable work to keep a stabler team that keeps on growing our impact, as well as materials and travel costs and conferences and all this. So yeah, sure. There's a lot. So the wish list is long.
For your Giving Tuesday campaign, I know that we can read about that on your Facebook page, right? ICE 911 Facebook page. And is that also on your website, ice911.org?
It's better linked to it from our Twitter feed and our Facebook page.
Okay.
And I should make sure the link that we've got on the website is the most up to date for Giving Tuesday. I think that just gives us a general link to donating. Yes, if you follow our Twitter and our Facebook, we have excellent people working on social media and donor outreach right now. Yeah, check out the Facebook and the Twitter. You'll get a lot of information.
Okay, great. You know what? I'll put the some of those links in the comments to this video as well, so people can just click on those and get there. All right, great. Leslie, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us and educate us about ICE 911. I knew quite a bit about it because we're friends, and so I knew, but I learned a lot more. So I thank you for that. And I had said at the beginning that I hoped at the end you would see why Leslie feels Barth is one of my heroines, and I hope that you now see that abundantly clearly. So thank you, Leslie. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. We appreciate it. We appreciate your time and your support for ICE 911.
Thank you.
All right.
So,
bye-bye. You're welcome. Bye, Leslie. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.